It is the next day. I gave the first coat overnight to dry. I had a heater in here with a fan in it to help that along. The first coat really takes a long time to dry. Sometimes it won't even dry overnight, but you have to wait until that's fully dry before you move on to the next coat. So here I'm going to start in this corner. This is the second corner that I did in the room. And the first thing I'm going to do is take my 4-inch knife and just run it up and down the corner to make sure that there's nothing in there that is left over from doing the first coat in this side of the corner. So this side of the corner is exactly the same as the other side. I'm just going to load up my 4-inch knife and lay on a thin coat just to cover the tape. The first coat is the one that takes the longest to dry. It's usually the thickest. It gets in the corners there, and that's pretty thick, and that really takes a long time for the moisture to come out of that. Well, here I've got the flat seam that I did yesterday, the one with the fiber mesh tape, and it's ready for the second coat. Once again, I'm going to use a trowel. I'm going to put it on straight from that. It's not going to go on very thick at all. The idea with these coats is to get the joint filled up as much as you can, but put on the coats as thinly as you can and avoid any buildup around the joint. As I move around the room, I'm going to hit the screws again. I'm just going to take my knife and scrape across the top of them just to make sure nothing is sticking out. Then I'll take compound, spread it on, and wipe it off. Like I say, this will take 3 times to completely fill these up. Down here I've got a receptacle, outlet box, that when I put the sheet on it broke around it. I didn't cut it out very well, and I patched that up by putting on a couple of strips of tape, and now I'm slowly building up around that. I've already got 2 coats on it. Just going to roughly lay on some more with the 4-inch knife in a circular motion around the box. At this point, it really doesn't matter if some gets inside the box or lips over it, because you can always scrape that off after. And I'm going to take my trowel and swing around it in a circle like that. And that leaves me with a very flat, smooth surface. At this point, the compound hasn't been watered down. It's still, you could say, full strength from the bucket. My next coats, I will be thinning it down, and I'll be showing how I do that. But what it does is it allows you to put on thinner coats that will dry a lot faster. These first 2 coats fill up the joints, and therefore the mud needs to be as thick as you can manage it. I'm back to the flat seam that I taped yesterday with the paper tape. And as you can see, it did sink into the gap, and what that does is it kind of pulls the tape in tight around the edges of the drywall as well. making for a smoother seam. You definitely don't want it puckered out on there, and that's generally what will happen unless you taper the edge. I'm just gonna run a coat on top of that, straight across, nothing fancy. It's mainly to fill up that bit of a dip there where it sunk into the gap. When you're doing this and you pull it up, you might see bubbles form in the compound, and the way to get rid of those is to trowel over them again a couple times and try to reduce the angle. Get your trowel in tighter to the wall like that, and that will pull the bubbles right out of there. At this point, on the second coat, any bubbles that are there are not really a big deal anyway, because you got more coats coming up and they'll be thinner and those will fill in the holes. While putting the second coat on this seam here, I see there's a problem. The edge of the fiber tape is actually fraying out of the joint. And the way I'm going to solve that is I'm going to take some mud and lay it on over those threads about, I don't know, as thin as I can get it while still covering them. All the way down to as far as they run. They started up here and they went down there. And then I'll clean up my trowel and make sure all the junk is off of it, and then I'll drag that across the joint to try to flatten that hump, or make the hump at least straight up and down. Now I've made my way around the room and I'm back to the corner that I started with yesterday. The reason why I didn't do this first is because it's not quite dry. There are a couple of patches here that are still damp. This is an outside corner. Outside corners are very difficult to dry. They usually are the last ones to dry. Now the reason why you don't want to hit the other corner while this is still even damp is that you'll drag the compound out of the corner, especially when it starts to get wet from the fresh compound, and it really makes a big mess. In this case though, I really don't have much of a choice. I want to get this corner done. It is the last one to do, and so I'm just going to go ahead and do it and hope for the best. There is a special corner trowel that you can get, and some guys swear by it. I've never actually used it, but I really can't see that it would do a good job, or as good a job as I want to do with this without sanding it. If you're going to sand it, yeah, okay, it can, be a little bit rough. But if you're going to skip sanding, it needs to be good.